Call the meeting to order, please. Would you please rise to honor our nation's flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Ms. Ross-Sikowicz? Ms. Scott?
Here.
Mr. Conway?
Here.
Mr. Gignac?
Here.
Mr. Leary?
Here.
Ms. Martin? Here. Mayor Murphy?
Here.
6 present, 1 absent.
Thank you. Under the minutes portion of the agenda, we have approval of the minutes of the regularly scheduled meeting of March 7th, 2012. Motion to accept by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Mr. Leary. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have permission to enter of March 21st. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Aramac Educational Services, LLC, in the amount of $3,139,753 to amend the existing contract to provide for the continuation of the management services to Lowell Public Schools for the operation of the district's school food service program for the 2012-2013 school year. Funding is provided by the School Department Food Service Revolving Account. To Drumlin Farm in the amount of $20,000 to provide an environmental education program for the 21st century after-school programming at the Robinson Middle School and Lowell High School. Funding provided by the 21st Century Community Learning Center grant. To the Revolving Museum for $18,000 to provide artbotics and breakdancing instruction for the 21st Century Compass after-school program at Lowell High School Freshman Academy. Funding provided by the 21st Century Community Learning Center grant. And to the Center for Educational Leadership and Technology for $14,200 to provide short-term implementation support services pertaining to learning, environment, definition, technology plan, and acceptable use policy revision. Funding would be provided by the School Department Computer Contracted Services.
Any discussion on these items? Move for approval by Councilor Martin, excuse me. I'm used to Councilor Martin. By Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Scott. Roll call, please.
Ms. Ross-Sikowicz? Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
6 yeas, 1 absent. Approved.
Under unfinished business, we have approved at the November 3rd, 2010 meeting, Lowell High teacher Phil Ma to travel to Spain with a group of students and staff during the April 2012 vacation. Maximum of 36 participants and 6 chaperones. Students will not miss any school time, no substitute teachers are needed, and there is no cost to the school department budget. Additional information, this trip will take place from Monday, April 16th through Sunday, April 22nd, 2012. The following Lowell High School staff will be serving as chaperones: Ann Bienvenue, William Dunahee, Mary Ann Dyson, Daniel Lassard, Phil Meyer, Timothy Patterson, and Thomas Thornton. Other Lowell High School staff members include Damri Cano de Montoya and Tracy Estrella, along with 2 adult non-staff. It's the wish of the committee. Move for approval by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Scott. Roll call, please.
Ms. Ross-Sikowicz? Ms. Scott? Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
6 yeas, 1 absent. Approved.
Next, under motions, we have 2 motions by Ms. Ross-Sikowicz. As she is sick tonight, I'd entertain a motion to defer to the April 4th meeting. Motion by Mr. Conway, seconded by Mr. Gignac. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next motion by Kim Scott and James Leary for the superintendent to replace the class rank system at Lowell High with a GPA profile distribution beginning with the class of 2013, and also for the superintendent to provide her recommendations on how valedictorian and salutatorian, Carney medals, and scholarships will be handled under the GPA profile distribution system. Not requiring a second. Mr. Leary?
I don't know if Ms. Scott, you want to go first, or, okay. I just, I think the evolution for me, even coming to this part, took a long time. I think part of it came in because switching and doing anything big it takes a lot of getting over many years of behavior that you've lived through, that you've experienced firsthand, both firsthand as well as through a child going through a academic setting. But one of the biggest things that I kept coming back to was words that Superintendent Carla Brooks-Berry used to say to us. And it was really, when you look at the high school, the wrong way to look at that experience is through your own experience. I graduated in 1985, which was 25 plus years ago, and high school was one thing. And I had a daughter who graduated 4 years ago, and high school was one thing at that point in time. And we're in 2012, and things change, and the dynamic changes. And if you don't change with it, then you put your students at risk for being able to compete with outside schools that do compete. So that's the big first hurdle for me was just the change of my own experience and my child's experience. I think the second part of it that it came to it is that competition for me is really important. A lot of folks, a lot of districts try to eliminate competition to make students feel good and feel better about themselves. I think that's false hope for what we really face later on in life, what they're going to see, not only in college and university, but also in the workplace. I think changing this for me, when I got my head around the fact that just does not eliminate competition, but instead enhances and allows our students who are competing against other schools that are actually making these changes and using a GPA, as opposed to a ranking system, helped me actually come to this place where I think it's a positive experience for our students. It enhances competition against other schools, and I mentioned Andover, but there's many others. I think the actual statistic is there's 55% of public schools actually use a GPA system. I would say to my friends who have, in terms of challenging GPA versus class rank, GPA makes up class rank. GPA is what you're utilizing class rank with. Universities are looking at GPA. It provides an opportunity for the student at Lowell High, not only the student who sits upon the AP courses or the Latin Lyceum, but just as important and maybe even more important, the road student or the lower end educated student, the lower grade student, actually has a better chance to compete when they go to college by going to a GPA. I think some of the historical hurdles, which I think are very important to the community, being the Carney Medal as well as our valedictorian, remain in place. Now, competition continues to exist because it should, because it's important. Students need to learn that competition is what life's going to be all about when they leave Lowell High School immediately, when they go either to the military, a job, or into the university or college settings. So it was an evolution. I would have done this probably earlier. I've been thinking about this for almost a year now. And I think it is a positive step for our students. It allows our students to compete with some of the schools that are right within our own Merrimack Valley, and it lets them compete on a very aggressive level. Thank you.
Ms. Scott?
Jim hit a lot there. As Jim mentioned, the majority of the public schools right now have gone to the system. Towns like Lexington, Winchester, Concord, Carlisle, Andover, Burlington. And there's a reason that they did that, and they believe that it's to allow more children to be allowed into colleges. And I think that's a direction that we want to go. The other point to that is that we have an incentive with this for children to take harder courses and to be driven by what our curriculum is and how rigorous our courses are. And children still compete, but they compete against themselves instead of the student next to them. And I would appreciate your support on this motion. Thank you.
Mr. Conway?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that what my colleagues, I certainly can appreciate the my colleagues' motion, and just because something is done for a number of decades, it doesn't excuse me, it doesn't necessarily mean it's right. And I think that what Mr. Leary said was, you know, looking forward, we have to take a look and analyze, and that things, the way they were done in the past, certainly can be different in the future. But I think what we have to also be aware of is we have to be cautious going forward with a program that has been in place for a number of years. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it shouldn't be challenged and it shouldn't be looked at and analyzed. I think that might be a smart way to go. I think tonight, to vote a yes or no on it, I think might be jumping ahead perhaps a little too far, because once again, we are affecting over 3,000 students. And we want to make sure that when that decision is made, it's correct. If you take a look at the website College Board, on there they actually have an article that deals with ranking. And my colleagues are absolutely correct when they say that a number of high schools have actually done away with the student ranking. They're absolutely right. But as my colleague just mentioned, some of the schools, Andover, Concord, Carlisle, Winchester. Let me just take a couple sentences out of this article. It says most small, private, and competitive high schools have done away with it meaning the student ranking, because they feel it penalizes many excellent students who are squeezed out of the top 10% of the class and then overlooked by elite colleges. Exactly what my colleague said. Although most public high schools still rank students, some now make it optional for students to report their rankings to colleges. So I think that what we have to do is be cautious, and to go a little bit further, if the chair would bear with me for a moment, because this is an extremely important excuse me, an extremely important motion. In the New York Times, there was an article that talked about schools avoid class ranking, vexing colleges. And what it did was, it talked to a number of college admission directors, and they were not necessarily pleased with that system at all, because they felt that there was not enough of information. Swarthmore College, quote from the Dean of Admissions: "If we're looking at your son or daughter and you want us to know that they are among the best in their school, without a rank, we don't necessarily know." And there was enough, and I'm not going to bore the body on this, but there's enough of evidence that I certainly saw from these admissions people that, to be quite frank with you, know a lot more about it than I do, that they're very skeptical of this process. So I think that going forward, I would like to see, the superintendent perhaps come up with develop a study group and examine that. You know, the people that are the practitioners, the clinicians, the people that actually deal with this on a daily basis. And I think it's important enough that we take that time to develop that study group, so that we want to make sure that we get it right. So at this particular time tonight, I think that I would have to hesitate on that. I wouldn't mind, I certainly would go forward with a study group headed up by the superintendent and her office, But the way the motion is written right now, and I respect my colleagues and I appreciate it, but the way it's written right now, I can't go for that motion right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gignac, and then Ms. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is something that needs to occur at some point. I just have a question through you to the superintendent or perhaps the headmaster who's here. Is this timeline that's worded in this motion, is this a realistic timeline to have this transition put in place for our students to, beginning with the class of 2013, is that a realistic timeline?
In all reality, I agree with much has been said on the floor, but I do look at how this impacts for the long term. So in most cases, when there is change, policy change, whether it's been the amount of classes that we've had or the overall course of studies, we have started with the incoming freshman class, look at, in fact, what it takes, the best recommendations. That includes groups of parents, that includes the teaching force, that includes administration, to look, in fact, of all the implications. Some are listed right here in the motion, as far as valedictorian, salutatorian, on and on. So, truthfully, in working with the incoming class, that makes more sense to me. There are kids who are in the junior class right now. It will change the outcomes. And so in doing a study like that, I absolutely want to look into this, and I want to be current with what demands are on our young people as far as acceptance into college and beyond. But that's how I feel. I don't know if Mr. Rosemaric has more to add as far as that, but I would think that a particular deadline on a particular class right now is premature without having looked into it in a much more detailed fashion.
Thank you. Mr. Rosemaric.
Primarily, I agree with what the superintendent said. On a purely technical matter, could we do this? Yeah, we could. We could report, we have the computer system and we could report it. But I think the biggest point being rolling it out with the incoming freshman class seems to make the most sense. It also seems to be something that we need to study. The way the motion is worded, I left it over there, but GPA profile, or profile distribution, exactly what do we mean by that? I think we need to come to agreement on what are we presenting. Are we going to be how are we calculating that GPA? Right now we have a weighted GPA. Would we be going to an unweighted GPA strictly on a 4.0 system? Would we keep the weighting that we have? There are a lot of elements and a lot of factors here that, in order to do right, are going to take some study.
Thank you. Thank you both for your comments. Like I said, I do think this is something that needs to occur. My only concern is this timeline that's worded in this motion. What I'm afraid of is, I know we have the computer systems and we have the staff to make this happen, as Mr. Rosemaric had just stated, but I don't want there to be any room for error. I don't want any students to be penalized for someone rushing to get this big step done. So that's my only concern. Like I said, I do think this is something we need to put in place at some point. The number one word that stuck out to me when Mr. Leary spoke was our students need to be able to compete. They absolutely need to be able to compete, and this is a tool that we can use. However, I would caution the timeline. That's the only thing I'm concerned with, is the timeline. And Mr. Rosemaric pointed out a number of questions that aren't necessarily answered by the wording of this motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Martin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I think the opportunity to really look at this is something that I think as a body we should all be open to, and certainly I'm interested in. As I look at, kind of an up or down vote tonight, I would have to say I feel wildly uneducated about this, and I wouldn't be confident, being able to vote for something that I honestly don't really know the ramifications of. And I think that, it's certainly it's a big issue. you know, if we look at a weighted GPA, certainly that makes some accommodations. But there is also this, I think we really need to be prepared to understand the full impact of this. And I don't think it's possible to do that if we don't do some very serious research. So I don't know what the makers of the motion plan to do tonight, if you know, if they were willing to, you know, look at this as a first step and then move forward with a study committee or some other kind of initiative like that. I'd certainly be supportive of that. But I don't think that I don't feel I'm in a position, certainly, to be well-schooled enough on what the impact of this would be on our students and on our district to make a yes or no vote this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Leary?
No, thank you. And Ms. Martin, I guess, you make a good point about having, I guess, in my words, but a comfort level and understanding. It took me a while to get to the point where I, you know, actually became a part motion into this, or filing a motion on it. I think the weighted part that Mr. Rosemary points out, that's my intent, but it's a good point. It's not in the specifics, and to actually vote on something without having that picture of it addressed. I mean, the bottom line really to focus on, in addition to comfort level, the GPA makes up the class rank. So if you have a child who's ranked number 50th in his class with a 4.0, and you have a child who's number 1 with 4.02, one's ranked number 50, one's ranked number 1. Sometimes they are actually that close. That's part of the reason why a lot of these public schools, which is, by the way, 55% of the United States public schools, do GPA. They do it a variety of different ways. Some of them take away the valedictorian, et cetera. I don't recommend that. I don't think it's a good point to eliminate that. But it's got to be, the focus is the GPA makes up what you call your class rank. I do think, though, what Ms. Martin points out is you got to have the research, and everybody, I think, should have the time or the time to do the due diligence. The study committee, the last thing I want to have is a study committee that comes back, you know, 2 years from now with a recommendation. And the practitioners, I appreciate practitioners. I think they should be involved. I think outside groups might be a bad part as well, under the guidance of the superintendent. But if we're going to sit here in, you know, next May of 13, excuse me, we're going to have a whole group of people who, in my opinion, where I've gotten today, or have I become today, are not having the benefit of competing fairly against other institutions. But I got to acknowledge it is a challenge for everybody to grab this at one point. I didn't grab it at one point. It took me almost close to a year to come to this point for a variety of reasons. So I've been willing to entertain, you know, a friendly amendment to move to have some type of a group, but I need a time limit that we have some substantial information and substantial discussion. I know we're going to get busy in the next few months going forward, but I think this is very important. You know, our high school, again, when I go back to 1985, it isn't the same high school anymore. And we shouldn't look at it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have 2 registered speakers on this motion, if the committee is willing to hear them now. Jay Mason.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Jay Mason. I live at 77 Tyler Park in the Highlands. Thank you, Mayor Patrick, Superintendent Franco, and other distinguished Lowell School Committee members. I'd like to support the motion to do away with traditional GPA ranking and adopt a GPA profile distribution. And the reason I'd like to do that is because I think that the ranking system, from everything that I've heard and educated myself over the past 2 or 3 months, I don't think it takes a long time to get your hands wrapped around it. You just need a little focus. This ranking system would help the vast majority of Lowell High students when they apply to college. You know, the students who are not in the top 5 or 10%, the majority of the students who are anxious to show themselves and maybe just coming of age and can do that in an appropriate and productive way. With profile distribution, I'm going to make 4 quick points. Schools look at you less like a number and more like a whole person. With profile distribution, you eliminate the need to play the class rank game that happens when students begin to choose classes based on how it impacts their class rank as opposed to what truly interests them. With profile distribution, it forces college admissions officers to look more deeply at a student's application. because they simply can't just look at numbers to evaluate the student. And finally, the majority of public schools, as I believe Mr. Leary had said, and nearly all Catholic and other private schools have left the class rank system already because they understand that it hurts kids in the college application process. It's an old-fashioned system that may have worked when the top 10% of kids went on to college. But today, with most kids going to college, it serves to harm kids in that process. We need to keep up with the times and do what's best for our students. Lowell High is only as good as the sum of its parts. Please consider this opportunity to strengthen and support this worthy idea and help propel Lowell High to the forefront of public schools in the state. I believe that we're number 2 in size in the state of Massachusetts. I'd like to see Lowell at number 1 or maybe number 2 in stature as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mason. Wendy Siegel-Body.
Good evening. My name is Wendy Siegel-Body, and I live at 60 Van Greenby Road in the Highlands in Lowell. I am both a parent of a student at Lowell High School and a department head in another school system locally in this area. What I really wanted to say is, being both a parent and a teacher and a department head, I've seen the whole ranking affect kids in a really negative way a lot of times. Both parents and kids, they fight over that number 1 slot, and they'll kill each other till they get there. Academically, anyways, that hurts a kid a lot. The kid that's number 2 that falls short, it's a lot more damage done to that kid by maybe a percentage of a point, and that far outweighs the kid that's a valedictorian. The reality is that some kids really don't come into their own until they reach adulthood. Anyways, if you don't give them that opportunity to be looked at as a whole and look at a system with a weighted GPA system, a kid might lose out from an institution that won't even take a look at them. So what I'm asking you tonight is to really consider what's on the table here. You have an opportunity to make a difference in a kid's life. Anyways, and have them looked at as a whole and not just a number on a piece of paper, because that number, the ranking, is an artificial number in terms of what that child really is. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Siegel-Body. Any further discussion on the motion? There was mention of a friendly amendment.
I guess I would ask, through you, Mayor, to the superintendent, if you had like a discussion group, how long would it take you to come back with some type of information that we could actually start making some decisions on?
It's evident that there's urgency in this motion, and so I would recommend before the end of the school year, within the next 3 months, that we take this under advisement, we go through it. I would think that would make sense at the ultimate, by the end of the, by before June.
Well, I think, Mayor, if I could, I want to make sure everybody has a good, solid comfort level, and especially, it's something that is a major change. I think once the information we have a chance to go through the data, that we can make some changes before the next school year, and I can have another good discussion regarding whether or not we do 2013 or not. I think, to kind of, I want to work with people to make sure everybody has that chance to have the time. And I think if we can get something in before June and have that discussion before the end of the year, we can achieve the same results potentially with what we're doing with our motion. So I don't know if my co-motion person would be willing to amend that so we can get a report back and have some type of vote before the end of the school year, I'd be willing to do that.
Ms. Cott?
I would be okay with amending the motion as long as there was a set date that we would be able to take this back up again.
Just by offer of suggestion, for the amended motion to read, for the superintendent to explore replacement of the class rank system at Lowell High with a GPA profile distribution, and also for the superintendent within 3 months' time to provide recommendations on how valedictorian and salutatorian county medals and scholarships will be handled, among other things, under the GPA profile distribution system.
I'm fine with that, Your Honor.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion as amended, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have a motion by Kim Scott for the administration to provide a full list of nonprofits between 2007 and present that have provided wraparound services, collaborated or supported the Lowell Public Schools in striving for student achievement. The report should include the stated goals and objectives of these entities, copies of the reports detailing how their goals are being fulfilled, and if the Lowell Public Schools have provided any funding. Seconded by Ms. Martin. Ms. Scott.
Thank you. This one's a little more self-explanatory, I think. Going into budget season, I thought this was relevant for us to get reports on what our nonprofits are doing and how we're providing funding for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Conway.
Yeah, just very quickly, I thought we already had that, didn't we already have that done?
Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry, through you to the,
Thank you. Within the last, I believe, year, at the beginning of a business partnership, I think it was last year this time, we did have a basic list, but I looked to see, how far that goes back. But yes, there is something that we've worked on just to look at the business partnerships, community partnerships. That's where we found out that most of our partnerships are with nonprofit and with, of course, educational agencies, and not as much with the business partnership. So yes, that's something that we have at this point, and I can look at updating.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have a motion by Kim Scott for the administration to provide quantitative and qualitative details on the Lowell High School dropouts broken down for each house. The report should include the outreach and retention procedures used, including samples of all documentation to track students. Second by Mr. Leary. Ms. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The intent of this motion was to get the reports on the dropout figures per house, obviously, and also so that we have them so that we can see whether or not there's policies that we need to put in place as far as how different house masters are handling, the documentation, what the documents are. I think, again, it's pretty self-explanatory that we need this information to go forward.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Any further discussion? Mr. Gignac.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this motion sort of looks a little like the motion myself and Mr. Conway put on a few weeks ago. So I think it's sort of asking the same questions. I don't want to put too much work on your shoulders, but I do know that you're already looking into this stuff, Madam Superintendent. So I think it's good to have all this information. I'm a little cautious on breaking this information down by each house. If we are to do that, I would like to see some supporting data, how many special needs students are in that house, how many ELL students are in that house, how many disciplinary issues are in those houses. It's just a series of things that need to be looked into when we're breaking it down by house. The last thing we want is houses to be turning on each other, and I don't want anything like that, but I think it's good to look at this information, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have a motion by Kim Scott and Patrick Murphy. Request the superintendent draft a plan to reinstate busing funding in support of a universal preschool access. The report could include consideration of a potential redesign of busing districts for early grades preschool through 4th, not only to reduce costs, but in order to encourage a greater sense of neighborhood and increased public health benefits, as well as a potential sliding fee-for-service model based upon financial need. Ms. Scott.
Okay. Once again. I think as a parent in the public schools of young children, I think it's imperative that we reinstate preschool busing. The children that are most in need, I believe, are not the ones that are attending school right now because they don't have the transportation to get there. And I've seen firsthand the difference between children that have attended preschool in Lowell Public Schools and those that haven't. I think it's something that can't be left out of the budget again this year. As far as the potential considerations for redesign, I think we've kind of left everything out there. Obviously the intent is if we reduce maybe our zone sizes, maybe we can save some money and, put it back into the preschool busing. But the motion is to receive a report from the superintendent. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leary?
I'm definitely going to support this. I think it's something that I know we've all spoken about. And I think, being on the committee for a little bit of time, listening to Ms. Martin articulate, this is an area that we've always wanted to find a way to refund because it's important. I think it's important because all the problems that we deal with certain students really start because a lot of kids don't have the opportunities for preschool. So it's a very, if we're able to do it, I think it'll have a major impact down the road. It'll help eliminate some costs in other areas where we're spending to make up for often where children don't have the access to preschool. So I think it's something that if we gotta kind of make another effort to really try to redo this. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Martin?
Thank you very much. Well, I do think it's certainly something that we need to be looking at, and I appreciate the makers of the motion bringing this forward. Just a couple quick things. As the superintendent is bringing together, there is certainly a lot of information that comes into this. The recognized benefits of having our youngest kids in a preschool, having a preschool experience before they come into the public schools, we've seen the impact of that. But I always do caution that it's important to know that the public schools can't be the answer for everyone. Our public school programming, in many cases, they're half-day programs, they're not full-time programs, so they're not going to be able to, excuse me, to reach every family and help every family in the way that they need. And the only thing that I really do want to, that does just give me pause, is the idea of the fee-for-service. I think any time in a district like Lowell where we get into a situation where we're asking our families to pay for something, even whether it's based on need, I get uncomfortable. I think because the range of family situations here in the city, in my mind, it falls into the same category as when we start talking about sports fees. I've never been in favor of that. I think it closes off way too many opportunities. I'd feel the same way about a preschool model that had any kind of fee structure as part of it. As a public school entity, we're not set up to function that way. So I would just, as the superintendent and her administration are working to pull together this report, that is one thing that I would council paying particular attention to, because I don't think we're necessarily in a situation where we'd want to include that as part of the end result. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Conway?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think it certainly is evident that if the children have an opportunity to go to school a little bit earlier in preschool, needless to say, it's extremely effective going forward. But I also agree with my colleague, the fee service model. I don't agree with that at all. I don't think it's something that we should institute. I think it's something that needs to be kept out of the equation. Do we have any idea at this particular point what something like this might cost? And the only reason I'm saying this is because if we're talking about the preschool, isn't it a different type of bus transportation? Is it door to door, or do I have that incorrect?
Madam Superintendent?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, there are strict stipulations for transporting young children. They have to be in minibuses. They have to be no more, I believe, than 15. It has to be, the monitoring piece is much more stringent. It follows the early childhood regulations in transporting young children. So yes, that is part of what we're looking at will be the transportation in preschool is door to door, and it is a different construct as far as funding. However, the underlying meaning in this motion is very important. We have 100 young people that have not gone to preschool. That's substantial. With all of the community services, with all of Lowell coming together, trying to provide the services. In the summer, thanks to the work of Assistant Superintendent Ann Murphy and her team, we are looking at some summer school exposure for these young people. However, this is something that in our budget conversations, we really need to look into this. The implications pay off again and again the earlier we get involved with developing young people's outcomes. So this is a motion that's interesting. There are also other implications we have to take into consideration as far as the neighborhood schooling piece. You know we're into compliance regulations, you know we're into balance regulations, but this is most assuredly very valuable to look into this in a long-term kind of way. Again, just like the GPA, well, GPA is going to be quicker, you have to look into this long-term. This is going to be complicated. You're talking about every single child. But the underlying message in this motion is something that we need to look at. So I thank you.
Just very quickly, Mr. Mayor, I congratulate the makers of the motion, because I think it is something that's extremely important if we can somehow try to figure this out, and certainly if we can put it into the budget. And it's, again, I think it's only going to help the district. It's going to help these children, certainly in their future. So I congratulate the makers of the motion, and again, I look forward to the report on that. Thank you, Madam Superintendent.
Thank you. Ms. Cotton.
I appreciate the comments about the sliding scale part of the motion, but I would like to say, as a parent that had a child in kindergarten last year, I think I would have gladly paid a small, not a large amount, but a small amount, a reasonable amount, to assure the children that were in that class with my daughters had the opportunity to attend preschool, because I saw the difference, and that carried through from kindergarten to first grade to second grade. Those children are still behind. So I would have paid that fee. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next motion by Robert Gignac and Patrick Murphy to direct the superintendent to report on the existing processes of the guidance counselors at Lowell High School, including how counselors are working with the students, the number of students per guidance counselor, and the equity of student number per counselor. Mr. Gignac.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion is pretty straightforward. I'm just looking for information to see where the resources are and if there are more resources needed in these areas. I know each guidance counselor at the high school is responsible for an enormous number of students, and unfortunately, a lot of students don't necessarily build a relationship with these counselors because the counselors have such a intense workload. And I would just like to see this information, like I said, so we can look where the resources are now and where we should put resources in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gignac. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have subcommittee reports. I'd entertain a motion to delay or defer the first two reports to April 4th. Mr. Conway is present, but in his current condition has been rendered nearly speechless, and probably for the first time in a long time. If it's highly contagious, I'll recommend that you visit a few city councilors, but I'd entertain a motion to defer to the April 4th by Mr. Gignac, second by Mr. Leary. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have the Curriculum Subcommittee, a report and approval of the minutes of the meeting of Thursday, March 8th, 2012. Ms. Martin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Meeting did take place on March 8th. Present from the Curriculum and Instruction Subcommittee were myself and School Committee Member Scott. Also present were Mayor Murphy and School Committee Member Gignac. From Central Office, we were represented by Superintendent Franco, Assistant Superintendent Claire Abrams, our Coordinator of Mathematics, Jeff Guazda, our Coordinator of Language and Literacy, Deborah Romeo, the Headmaster from Lowell High School, Ed Rosmaric, and also from the high school, our Director of Curriculum, Dr. Wendy Jack. We had 4 items that we discussed. I do believe that we can, we may need to take individual votes on several of them. But we can go through, sorry. We should be able to go through them fairly quickly, sorry. You can get a glass of water, by all means. First was a research proposal that was presented to the subcommittee by Dr. Regina Panasuk at the University of Massachusetts Lowell School of Graduate Education. She was requesting to do research within the Lowell Public Schools. Her topic is in-service mathematic teachers, their beliefs and perceptions about student misconceptions. A proposal was presented by Claire Abrams, and I think she really did a very good job of letting us know exactly what Dr. Panasuk is looking for and how we can benefit from it. As we look at the misconceptions that many teachers hold around some of I don't want to say mistakes, but some of the challenges that they face as students are going through the learning process. I think it is going to be research that certainly will be conducted expertly within our district and will really give us some very valuable information, not only to us, but to the field of education in general. So the subcommittee did move to approve that, and we would submit that to the school committee as a whole. I think we can combine that with the next research proposal that we received from Jennifer Bauer, a teacher at Lowell High School. Her research study is focusing on how urban high school students use digital technologies for writing purposes. She's including within this study in terms of Facebook and Twitter and a lot of different technologies, not just your simple tablets or things like that. Again, I think it will in the end give us some good information and certainly contribute to the field of education. Finally, the third one that I think we can all combine together would be, we did receive a request from Principal Jason DiCarlo at the Merkland Elementary School. They were requesting permission to participate with part of Heinemann Publishing Company's work. They are developing a videotaped instructional session, a webinar, and they wanted to use both teachers and students at the Merkland as kind of the stars of this little learning show. Principal DiCarlo was very excited about being asked to participate. I think his teaching staff and students also were really looking forward to being part of this. It will be obviously adhere to all of the confidentiality policies that we have in place as part of the Lowell Public School District. So all parents will be informed and will have to sign off and approve their students participating. But it will be an opportunity for students and teachers from Lowell Public Schools to be featured in a learning tool that will be used throughout the nation. And it was very nice to see them be kind of recognized by this group as a place where expert education is happening and to really serve as a model for that. I would, with the indulgence of my colleagues, say I would submit all three of these research and I guess, I don't know if we can call that a research proposal, but the Heinemann Publishing Company request, submit all three for approval to the full committee, and I'd make that in the form of a motion.
Motion by Ms. Martin to take all three together, seconded by Mr. Leary, and approve. Roll call, please.
Ms. Ross-Sikowicz? Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
Thank you.
Our final topic at the subcommittee meeting was a report of progress on the equitable, rigorous curriculum and course offerings at Lowell High School. We did receive an update from Assistant Superintendent Abrams regarding how her the new structure of the curriculum instruction area from Central is working both at the lower grades and really extending now through the high school in terms of supporting our efforts to improve the rigor in all of our courses. She did discuss with us the PARC, which is the Partnership for Assessment for College and Career, which is a new kind of structure or instrument that we're using in terms of connecting our content and our standards. And when we talk about the Common Core, our state standards and beyond, that's really kind of the process we're using for that. I guess one of the key things that was discussed was that at the upcoming Professional Development Day at Lowell High School, I believe it's April 25th, they're going to be presenting some new and improved procedures and I guess, examples of what our curriculum and what our, specifically our syllabi are going to look like across the entire high school. It is work that I am very excited to see happening. It is something that is absolutely critically important, not only for a school committee member to be able to understand the difference between courses, which is the least of our worries. It's really critical that our students, and certainly their families also, can understand exactly what expectations are, and that for our instructional staff to have that guide that's actually part of their everyday teaching work in the classroom, that it is being purposeful and intentional, and something that can be assessed over the course of time. So certainly looking forward to that happening at the high school, and we will be anxiously awaiting the new documentation and the new syllabi that will be shared with this committee. My expectation now would be that, I guess we're talking about the end of June, just to be clear. Is that correct? The end of June, we'll see that? So we can already anticipate that there'll be a curriculum and instruction subcommittee scheduled at that time, so that we will be able to look at these new and improved documents. I'd submit that as a report of progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Motion to accept as a report of progress, second by Mr. Gignac. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have reports of the superintendent, the realignment of security staff and school resource officers. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This first report is a report as a result of a motion by Mr. Robert Gignac, report that the superintendent worked with the Lowell High School administration to realign the security guards, resource officer staff to consistently monitor the surveillance system in place. You're in receipt of a detailed report that was submitted by Dr. Roxanne Howe, Discipline and Operations Specialist, to the headmaster of the high school. In this report, you can see she went into the details of really the assignments of the 7-member security team, and the fact that the security team at Lowell High School is really looking at prevention, being in the halls, being where children are meeting, being at places throughout the school building. And she, in the report, if you look at deployment of the security staff, it does have the different stations of the 7 members of the security team. A point that was noticed and important to look at is that the assignment is unfilled in some cases 57% of the time due to absences in different times, so that was something that I thought was really interesting. But the particular roving security staff is put in certain places every day, so they're moving around these particular areas to make sure safety is in place. So then in looking at the security, the cameras, that kind of piece, Dr. Howe tells us that there are 65 cameras on display, 100 and 124. The cameras at this particular point at Lowell High School, due to the staff and the way the staff is deployed to be out and about and with the young people, they're really used for investigations. They're also monitored when there's a major incident. At this particular point, the recommendation by the high school staff is that when security is fully staffed, that the person who is in that station F would be pulled to then monitor the cameras before and after lunch periods. And also that the SROs, the school resource officers, at this particular point, I believe there are 3 assigned at Lowell High School. I believe that's current as of today. They're going to be in that camera room. The question still at hand is the way the security people are used. If there are any questions the committee have, the headmaster is here in case you have any details, or if there was more information that you wanted, Mr. Gignac, in your motion.
Mr. Gignac.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Madam Superintendent, Headmaster Rosmerick, and Dr. Howe for providing this report so quickly. I appreciate the detail that's included in this report. However, I'm still concerned with the breakdown. As you noted, assignment F goes unfilled 57% of the time. And the only days when security staff when position F will be monitoring the cameras before and after lunch, most of the time these individuals are not there. There's 50% of the time nobody's watching the cameras before and after lunch. I do like the point where the resource officers will rotate in and out of the room as available. I like that part, but I'm still not pleased with the first note that only position F will monitor the cameras before and after lunch. I don't see where the district invested almost $1 million, maybe $1 million by now, in this technology, that we're underutilizing it. If the high school needs another security guard, if they need another resource officer, if they need 2, if they need 3 more, I'd like to know about it. I would have liked to have seen that in this report, because I'll mention it over and over. The district made a very large investment in the security system at the high school. We have staff there that walk the halls. However, they can't be at each end of the hall. If you're in the 200s on one side of the building, you have no idea what's going on the other side of the building. However, if you have someone in the camera room, they can walkie-talkie over and say, you got to get over to the other side, something's going on. Right now, that's not happening. Like I said, I appreciate the quick response. I appreciate the detail of this report. However, I would like to know if there's anything else as a committee that we can provide to ensure that we're utilizing the resources, and most importantly, to ensure that the students and staff are as safe as possible. Thank you.
Mr. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also appreciate the report. The concern that I have, and I've heard it from a number of people on different levels, the rotation of the security. And security, quite often, as somebody that was a housemaster myself for a number of years, I used the security as kind of like my eyes and ears to let me know what was going on. And quite often what would happen is they would develop relationships with students because they were in the same area. They saw those kids going into the same classes, they saw them walking the same corridors, and there was a comfort level that security had with the students in that area. And students felt if there was something going on, if there was a problem, they felt safe going to that security guard. It was extremely important to find out what was going on. And to be honest with you, that's where we received most of our hot tips on the problems that were developing in the course of the day. And it's kind of like, if you want to draw a parallel, it's kind of like having a teacher going into a classroom, in a different classroom, every other week or every month. We wouldn't do that as educators. That certainly isn't sound. You'd hire a teacher, you'd have that teacher in there, and a relationship would develop between the teacher and the students. And with security, I find it to be a very, very effective way if those security people are assigned to a specific area. Now, that doesn't mean that they're there for life, but the fact is that whether it's a semester or the year or whatever it may be, or quarterly, but if they're rotated on a regular basis, people I have heard, they don't get to know the students that well, and therefore that information is not transmitted to them and not going back to administration as well as it should. So I think that's something that we should take a good look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leary?
Just quickly, I mean, a good motion, a decent report. I think it's funny, like, we should probably be asking the experts, like Sergeant Dolan, like, what do you recommend? How, and I could say, I look at it and I say, well, we should probably do this, or we should do that. And it feels good in between the comfort of my own ears, but the reality is Sergeant Dolan's the expert, and his folks are the professionals. And it's not, I'm not gonna make a motion, can't make a motion anyway, but that's kind of where we should probably get to. What does he think we should be doing? I mean, there's a lot of people have suggested to me, for example, there should be one entrance to the high school and you get greeted by a security guard. And they call you, go like, who are you here to see today? Well, Dr. Wendy Jack. Well, let me call to make sure she's there. That sounds reasonable to me, but it may not be reasonable from a professional standpoint. That's where we need to go. Thank you.
Mr. Gignac.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One more thing I wanted to mention while reading through this report. I did note in a number of areas that we're leaving some of the doors unlocked. And it's one thing if we had enough security guard staff to be walking around to see who's walking in each and every door. However, we don't have that. But what we do have is a state-of-the-art security system, monitoring system that could monitor those doors to see if we need to leave them unlocked, if that's what we absolutely need to do, then I think we should be able to see who's coming in and out of our building. As Mr. Leary stated, you can walk right in the front door and there's no one there to tell you where you should be going, to greet you, to let you know where you have to go to find somebody. These are all little things that I think we should look at. Again, thank you for the quick response. Thank you, Madam Superintendent, Mr. Mayor.
Madam Superintendent.
So, Mr. Gignac, this is new. We reported out on this particular motion, but you would like for us to bring it back until there are more answers as far as what it would take to get the surveillance system into full operation. Is that correct?
Any further discussion on the report? I'd entertain a motion to accept and place on file by Mr. Leary, seconded by Mr. Conway. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have a report, the Aspen Portal Access for Lowell High School Parents and Students. Madam Superintendent.
Okay, this is a motion by Mr. John Leahy and Mr. James Leary to request the superintendent to provide the school committee with an update regarding the Lowell High School student parent portal, and report should contain the number of parents that are not able to view their child's school status and how many parents are not yet able. In addition, what action steps are in place that will ensure 100% access. In this particular report, and at a meeting on Monday morning, my bi-monthly meetings with the high school team, we discussed this particular report. And so, just so you know, there is any parent who wants access can, in fact, put in an application, and then that's put into the system. At this particular point, about 500 parent passwords are in use, and we asked to see, are those parents really using it? And they actually have been using it, but still, we do not have applications for more than that many. The issue is that not all teachers at this particular point are involved in reporting out through the Aspen portal, and at this particular point, it's about 1/3 of the teachers. At our meeting on Monday morning, Mr. Rosmerick and our team talked about how, in fact, can that be increased, what kind of training is involved, because it's challenging for parents where they could have some teachers that are on that for their particular students, but not all. So the plan for the 100% is still under review, and I'm going to ask the headmaster to comment on that particular plan.
Well, we've rolled it out. We've spoken with our teachers. The teachers who have been using the system really seem happy with it. As the superintendent reported, about 1/3 of the teachers are actually using it. It's all of the parents who have requested it are in the system. And we're keeping up with requests as they come in. We're doing what we can to publicize it. It's on the website. I'm talking about it every month with Friends of Lowell High meeting. So we're doing what we can to get the word out, try to encourage people to use this. The next step is going to be getting our teachers on board. We've got about a third of them. When we rolled this out last year, I just started with a note out to all teachers to say, this is available, who would like to? I had a couple dozen come to me immediately and say, this is great. Anything new, some people are going to lead the wave, others are going to come, and then some need to be pulled along. So the people who really wanted it jumped on board. We had a group that was ready to go. We had another group who said, I don't know about it, but I'd like to be trained, and they got on. Everything I know so far, the people who have been using it, the teachers, are very happy with the system. They think it works very well. They find that it saves time when we get to progress reports and when we get to report card time. The next step is to have everybody doing it. We've been encouraging people. We can continue to make training available. Our data processing folks are willing to offer offer classes, go individually to teachers and make it available to them. So I think we're at the next step where we will continue encouraging people to use this. We're never going to get 100% usage until we say it's mandatory, you must do it. And that's sort of where we find ourselves right now. Making that statement may have larger implications for the district. I don't know what teachers would say to that. I have been approached by some who are questioning whether that's a negotiable item for the contract or not. That's why we haven't taken that step yet. My opinion, I think it's the way we do business. We're moving forward. It's a computer age. What used to be a grade book and a pencil is now the X2 computer system. But that's the status of things. That's where we find ourselves right now. I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rosemary. Mr. Leary.
First of all, thank you, I appreciate it, and you actually, Madam Superintendent, you addressed a question that we did have that really wasn't a part of the motion, but it falls in line. How many people, how many educators at the high school are actually utilizing it? And I think Mr. Rosemaric articulated one of the reasons when we do go into negotiations, that's an area we need to be focused on. 1/3 is not, I thank you very much for the 1/3 that do it. The other 2/3, we got to find out why. Is it an educational issue? Is it a time? Is it a comfort level? I think we do have more time to work with that, but I think we need to make sure we have a specific action plan to ensure that we have started to whittle that, 1/3 to 2/3 and so on. It is new, so we need to get over that, mind gap, if you will, which, it takes time. However, I know all teachers have access to email, right, and phones and telephones. So this is actually an easier way for folks to keep in touch with their students, or may even prevent questions in terms of, is my child actually walking into the class? Which is part of it, which is a elementary version of what's going on here, but that's the information. As far as the 500, obviously that's not good either. I appreciate the effort that does it. I know it's right on our website, access to the portal, so we have done a good marketing pitch to it. I know that a lot of the house masters, when they talk to the students, they're encouraging, when they talk to the parents, often in a disciplinary situation, but they also are using this as part of a sales pitch for their child, for them to get information to their child. So I do thank you for the motion. I think we got to be aggressive with it following up, but we need to do that in an intelligent fashion so people want to buy into it, as opposed to we give the final edict, you got to do it. Because then, you can develop certain resentment that will make it less effective. A side note to this, Mr. Leahy and I also had a motion regarding getting this done K through 8, which, we need to touch base on that. A lot of people have come up to me regards, how do I find out information? And as part of the technology monies we're going to be spending this year and updating websites, that's a good time to start marketing that pitch as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the report? Ms. Martin?
Just a quick question, if I could. Just in reviewing the report, so does this Aspen system, does it include students other than Lowell High School students? So a parent who has, any parent in Lowell Public Schools would be able to access this if they went through the high school? Or are we limiting it to Lowell High School parents right now?
At this particular point, as far as a parent portal, I believe it's at Lowell High School, but that same feature, of course, is available to parents at other levels also. So it is something that we could open up in the future to parents at the other grade levels.
I certainly think that's the direction we need to be moving in, maybe even as we kind of come up on start planning for the next, back-to-school season. Because I think you'd have a lot of parents across the district who'd be really interested to be part of it.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the report? Motion to accept as a report of progress by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Leary. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Our next report is on the Lowell High School no smoking policy. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a motion that was made in September by Mr. Leahy and Mr. Leary. Request that the superintendent work with high school administration to develop a no-smoking policy to be implemented immediately. In this particular report, it states the policy in the handbook and how the tobacco products are indeed prohibited. And we have been prohibited intergenerationally through all of our lives. However, the part that the punishment is in fact, according to the guidelines in the handbook, that they work with students, they counsel them. There's a clinic with Lowell Community Health Center that offers smoking cessation counseling, and children, are referred by housemasters to be part of this counseling. They have spoken to children on many different levels, but according to the policy, that is in fact how the smoking is handled, and there are punishments and ramifications as a result according to the policy. And I welcome any questions you may have of me or the headmaster.
Mr.
Just
Leary.
on behalf of Mr. Leahy, I want to thank you for the report, and Mr. Leahy came down tonight to ensure that both this motion and the previous motion were addressed. So again, thank you very much. And incidentally, we did know there was a policy. We just want to make sure that we're continually going back to it and ensuring we're not smoking in the school, which is a serious issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Motion to accept as a report of progress by Mr. Leary, seconded by Ms. Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. The next report is on the Daniel P. Kane Courtyard Restaurant at Lowell High School. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You may recall that earlier in the school year, I had reported to you all that due to the staffing cuts, there was a paraprofessional involved in the Daniel Kane restaurant, that there were challenges with billing, collecting money, and serving the food with the amount of staff. There are 2 staff there, and there are, you have to really watch the safety in the kitchen with the knives and whatnot. And so working together with Lowell High School cafeteria people, the people from Aramac, Mr. Rosemary's staff, they came to a way for staff and others to prepay with kind of a sliding card, kind of like our students have. And so with realigning and thinking about being able to serve lunches again, since January, the restaurant has in fact gotten up to speed, and they're able, with a limited menu, I believe, able to serve lunches and invite people in. And so that, I just wanted you to know that had occurred, and if you have any questions, please ask.
Thank you. Mr. Conway?
Just a brief comment. I want to thank you for the report, but I also want to say that, that's something, a program that's been around, I believe, over 30 years. And, I think when we first, as a body, heard that it was in trouble and there was a problem and it wasn't working the way it did before, I think that certainly was a concern. And I'm glad that you and your administration got together with the high school and made this work, because that many of these students, if you get down there, I mean, they're so very proud. They do an excellent job, and the staff does a great job. And also, it has been said that many of those students go on to become many of the chefs in the local area, and even beyond. So I'm certainly glad that is still up and running and functioning well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the report? Motion to accept is report of progress by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Scott. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have a report on the ramp-up grant. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My last but happiest report is that in a collaborative effort through Janine Durkin, the coordinator at the Freshman Academy, and Karen Rochelo, the coordinator of special programs, they have secured a Department of Education grant for $50,000 for collaborative partnerships. And so it is a ramp-up grant. And so that will allow for more support systems, and this is actually a really nice move towards dropout prevention for young people, because it's after-school programs, it's transition moves. There's a Compass program, so there's some much academic involved, but also some very nice activities involved for young people. And this has been a very nice collaboration through Central Office Administrator and Freshman Academy Director. And we're just very happy to have this opportunity so we can expand the reach for our young people in the Freshman Academy. And so just wanted to let you all know.
Thank you. Ms. Martin?
Thank you very much. I would just like to add my congratulations, too. I think that, looking at this as a dropout prevention strategy, it is clearly the most critical time when we can reach these students. The dropout, the highest dropout rate is between that freshman, sophomore year. Historically, it has always been that way, not unique to Lowell, across the nation. And it seems that real tipping point that if you can get those added supports around a student, those structural supports around them, like a tutor, like some activities that keep them engaged and connected with the school system, I think we can really see some serious improvement in terms of that critical dropout rate that we need to be addressing in a myriad of ways. It's nice to see that this partnership will bear that out for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the report? In that case, I'll entertain a motion to accept by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Conway. Roll call, please.
Ms. Ross-Sikowicz? Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
Next, we have under communications 2 thank you notes, one from the family of George Babalitos and one from the family of Nora L. Wilk. Motion to accept and place on file by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Scott. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Finally, we have the SEIU Local 888 school clerks hereby donate 12 sick days to Lorraine Jakubek, special education clerk. Motion to accept by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Leary. Roll call, please.
Ms. Ross-Sikowicz? Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin? Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
Next, we have adjournment. Motion by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Ms. Martin. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? We stand adjourned.